Greetings, everyone. This is the Sharpen Up podcast. I'm JC Bruce, one of your hosts, along with my co-host, Ron Rollins. Hey, Ron.
Good morning, Jeff. I'm trying to look thoughtful like a co-host should. Yeah.
That's right. For those of you
Greetings,
who are seeing us on YouTube or elsewhere, where this is both a podcast and what do you call it when it's a video podcast?
I think it's a video podcast. It's a
video
cast.
podcast.
There
video cast.
There should be a name for it. I don't know. It might just still be a podcast because, that seems like an all-encompassing term. We should know these things, and maybe that's the research to do between now and the next one. I don't know.
Yeah, as professional podcasters, we should be familiar with the terminology, shouldn't we?
For our thousands of listeners, that's right. Yeah.
Right.
But for those of us, thousands of viewers who are actually listening to the audio-only version, we should use our radio voices, Jeff.
Right.
Our radio voices. Right.
This is my radio voice.
That's right. This is like when you're on NPR. No, this is the NPR voice. That's right. Actually, I Saturday Night Live had a great sketch a couple years back with a couple of the women cast members. I don't remember who, where they were doing the NPR fundraiser, and if you call now, we can give you a free gift. I've made some potholders that just hilarious. It's like some rural NPR station, public radio station, and I believe that is the one where Alec Baldwin also appeared as a guest, and the sweaty balls
God
line came up, oft repeated at our house as a punchline to almost anything, but yeah. But poor Alec Baldwin. Let's not even forget that. Forget Alec Baldwin. You know what I want to talk about? In your Sharpen Up newsletter for July, or for August, I mean. No,
for August.
July.
Yeah.
For August, yeah.
Coming up.
It's coming up. The one you just sent me the other day talks about August is National Pirate Month.
Oh, yes, that's right.
And well, because you wrote it, and I think lest today's podcast delves far off the historical deep end. I love pirates. I have loved pirates since I was a little kid. I don't know. I think it was when we lived in Tampa, when I was a little kid. We moved around so much when growing up in the Air Force that every time we would move to a new town, my mom was really good at like finding out stuff about the town we were moving to get us kids. We were little kids, all excited about it. And she found out that Tampa had a big pirate. We were moving from San Antonio to Tampa, and Tampa, as you know, since you grew up there as well, and now live in Florida, has Gasparilla, has this major pirate story, right? Almost all of which is believed today to be completely made up, about Jose Gaspar, this Spanish rogue pirate, who apparently burned down Tampa in 1820, and was chased down by some brave young naval captain. And Gaspar, rather than be captured alive, wrapped himself in an anchor chain and threw himself overboard into the drink during the height of the battle. And man, when I was a second grader, I ate that shit up. That was great. And also too, they had the big giant Gasparilla parade downtown every year, I think in February, and which you've seen. You grew up in Tampa as well. Tell me, what do you remember? Am I making this up? This is
well, I don't know, but it doesn't matter. It's all made up, so you might as well. I mean,
I was gonna say, I didn't realize until I was an adult and I was reading up on Gaspar just randomly on Wikipedia. I'm like, yeah, I remember that when I was a kid. Like, it's like believed to be completely fictitious tale,
right,
which people in Tampa have embraced anyway as their own. So I'm like, whatever, okay.
Yeah, well, the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, I think, have probably fixed pirating in most people's minds in the Caribbean, but in fact, it went all the way up. I mean, Jean Lafitte was heavily engaged in the Battle of War of 1812 and the Battle of New Orleans. In fact, were it not for those northern Gulf pirates, the British might have overrun New Orleans. I mean, the garrisons there did not have enough gunpowder. They did not have enough cannonballs, and the pirates basically saved the day. And if they had overrun New Orleans, the British then would have had a clear path all the way up the United States. You know, they had a triple pincer movement going on down through Lake Champlain, in through Washington, D.C., and then up through New Orleans was their strategy. And that cut them right off. So yay for pirates.
Do you remember that old movie from the 60s, The Buccaneer, with Yul Brynner playing Jean Lafitte? Oh, yeah. And Charlton Heston, I think, playing Andrew Jackson. Man, I loved that movie. It came out probably when I was about 10 or 11 years old, and that movie was the bomb. That was so cool. Yul Brynner, he was a pirate.
Yeah, and then there's all these.
Right, he had hair too, which was weird for Yul Brynner, you know, because but we had, you know. So anyway, that was great.
Famously bald. Yeah, but of course, there's a difference between privateers and pirates and buccaneers. So, you know, Sir Francis Drake, you know, at behest of Queen Elizabeth, was plying the Atlantic in search of Spanish treasure ships, which he raided and brought back to the crown. And for that, he got knighted by the Queen. But, you know, if you happen to be, you know, in Spain, he was this evil, dastardly pirate, you know. El Drake. So well, one person's pirates, another person's hero, you know, kind of like, you know, Captain Jack Sparrow, right?
Or Josh Hawley, who we'll talk about in a little bit. You left out Blackbeard out of the newsletter, though, man. And Blackbeard is my favorite. And you were, to make your point about it, was not just all Florida and the Caribbean. He was along the Carolinas. His battle where he got killed by I forget when I was in third grade and reading pirate stuff till it fell out of my ears. I could even tell you the name of the English naval officer who killed him. I do remember his boat was the Queen Anne's Revenge, though. I remember that, and that battle happened off the coast of North Carolina. So he was way far north from the Caribbean then.
You know, as I write the newsletter every month, I usually write it much longer than the version that ultimately gets distributed to my tens of thousands of newsletter readers. And I did have a Blackbeard item in there. I did, and I edited it out. So maybe since I haven't sent it out yet, maybe I should put it back in. I did have Black Bart in there.
Black Bart is in there, yeah.
Yeah, and what I found fascinating about Black Bart was that when he was finally killed, and he was off the coast of Africa when the British caught up with him, his crew was so drunk they couldn't defend themselves. So, I mean, is that, you know, you could just sort of see Captain Jack Sparrow at the helm of the what is it, the Black Pearl, you know, and everybody's so loaded, you know, it's like, oh well. You know, well, we're dead.
You kind of have this mental image of poor Black Bart going like, "Come on, guys!" You know, like Jesus Christ, they're right there. You know, they're shooting at us. Yeah, shooting. Yeah.
Vasty swabs.
Where's more grog? But so when did pirates go from being like these horrific, disgusting people to being the heroes in popular culture, or the fascinating subjects of popular culture that they are today? Is it all Robert Louis Stevenson's fault? I mean, Treasure Island is certainly like a classic, right? And I don't know if there was some body of pirate literature, popular pirate literature, pre-Treasure Island. If there was, it doesn't matter, because Treasure Island certainly is the cutoff bar for, you know, and it's still a great book. I mean, I've read it a couple times, read it to my kids. They loved it, you know. The movies are all good. You know, there's at least 2 movie versions, right? Maybe 3. And Disney did one. And I assume that's kind of where this, and those great Howard Pyle illustrations, you know, and I assume that's when all these guys went from being complete and utter monsters to being romanticized semi-heroes, I guess. But
and you know, Pirates of the Caribbean is one of my favorite movies, and you know, I think it's, for a lot of people, certainly true for me, that's when I sort of latched onto Johnny Depp. I mean, he's obviously made, you know, a lot of films, and a lot of music, but that role, I mean, and there was a scene in Pirates of the Caribbean, and I don't recall the exact words, but basically he was saying, what is it about this ship, that you have? And he's saying, well, this ship is more than just, a boat. It is freedom.
Right.
And I think that's part of what gets us right about pirates. I mean, the idea of you can get on a ship and you can go out on your own, and it's kind of like the image of the Western cowboy,
Right.
the loner out on the great prairie fending for himself. This whole sense of freedom and independence, and that's obviously it's very appealing. It strikes a chord. So I mean,
I guess I hadn't really thought about that, but you're exactly the way you say it makes complete sense, and I guess that is the appeal. Coming at it as a young kid, the ships were part of the thing, because I was really big into model building at that time, and you could get those great old plastic Revell model ship kits, with the rigging and everything. And about the same time, the other naval thing that I was totally into as a kid at that age was old Ironsides, the USS Constitution.
Oh, yeah.
Speaking of the War of 1812, which has now reappeared in our podcast today. And I knew everything. I knew all the battles, all the ships, and all that stuff. And I've been to the old Ironsides in Boston a couple times. Once with my wife on honeymoon years ago, and then once when I was a little kid. And one of my prized possessions to this day is that when I was in second or third grade, and we were walking through the old Ironsides, and they're constantly rebuilding it. They're constantly cleaning up old, because it still is seaworthy and it's in the ocean and in Boston Harbor there. So it weathers constantly, and they're always like painting it and fixing it up. And we were walking down the main deck, and there was this workman there sitting there with a chisel chunking out old wood, and there was a pile of it that I assume was going to be thrown out, sitting right on the deck next to him. And he looks up and he sees my face going like I want a piece of that wood. And he looks around, sees nobody, takes a piece and hands it to my mom and says, "Put it in your purse, lady, and get out of here." So I still have it on the bookshelf.
That's really wonderful.
About 3 inches long. It has black and white paint on it and the chisel marks. And I don't know if it's original to the 1700s, but it's part of old Ironsides. So yeah. Anyway.
Wow, that's cool.
And you realize Johnny Depp keeps showing up in these podcasts too. And I don't know, because he showed up in the last one, not because of the trial, but because it was Dillinger was in your last newsletter. And we talked about Public Enemies, which I think is one of his also great roles. He may be a despicable human being, but he's a great actor. And Public Enemies is a wonderful gangster flick. And I didn't realize, I looked up John Dillinger later after we talked. You know how old he was when he died?
No, not exactly. No.
31.
Wow.
Think of all the pictures you've seen of Dillinger that make him look like he's 60 years old.
Yeah. No, he's a kid.
He was a kid. He was a kid. He died at 31. It's like, oh, well,
yeah.
All right. Packed a lot in.
Yeah, right. Yeah, he did.
Including 2 prison terms. Oh well. There's a Dayton connection to Dillinger. He was caught here, I think, for one of the at a girlfriend's house, and the local Dayton history, the local historical society has the nickel-plated Colt 45 semi-auto handgun that he was arrested with, and the police chief kept it as a souvenir for years and engraved on the side of it that it was the gun confiscated from John Dillinger, and they put it on. They occasionally put it on display downtown. It's cool, yeah. And
that's very cool.
I think the arrest here was what sent him up to one of the prison where he had the famous jailbreak, where he carved the gun out of soap. Yeah. So there you go, Johnny. We'll mention you next month too. We promise. Oh well. Hey, speaking of Josh Hawley. Speaking of pirates, you had that quote. You read a quote to me before during the research portion of the early part of the podcast from the New Yorker, I think, which I had not.
Yeah. It's Andy Borowitz. Well, one of the highlights of the last January 6th committee hearing in July was a scene they showed of, and I think this was Liz Cheney really getting even here.
Yeah.
And so they showed Josh Hawley, giving the power salute outside to all the demonstrators right before they storm inside. What's not seen in the picture is the fact that he's surrounded by cops. So he's perfectly safe when he does this, act of defiance.
It looked
And
a
the
little
next
bit
thing
like, it looked a little bit like a Nazi salute too, I thought.
Well, some people are calling it a Nazi salute, but his his fist was clenched, so not exactly the Heil Hitler, but kind of, sort of, and certainly thematically consistent with his politics. But but the next thing you know, they've got one of those inside cameras in the Capitol, and the guy is running like a scared bunny through the halls because guess what? Yeah, Josh, you wanted them to go inside, and here they are. And if they catch you, they're going to cut your throat because they don't know you from anybody else in there.
Right.
So there's a great line from Andy Borowitz. He says, Senator Josh Hawley is deeply concerned that his newfound reputation for cowardice is overshadowing his commitment to end democracy. And it's, the guy's a terrible person. He's just an awful human being.
Yes.
And
a pissant to boot, as we now see.
And a pissant, yeah, and a chicken. So he needs. But that was the highlight. For some people, it probably is the highlight of all of the hearings.
Oh yeah,
because it is just it has blown up the internet with memes about Josh Hawley.
Yes. Which I finally tired of. They were very good and very fast. I mean, the speed at which those things happen now is definitely
stunning.
It's stunning, and it is definitely you can internet, good thing for the world, bad thing for the world. You could have that conversation all for a year, right? And never.
I think the answer is yes.
In this case, both bad and good. I mean, here in Dayton at our TEDx Dayton, we had a guy a couple of years ago who gave a talk about memes and their general value to mass psychology, just the way that they've sort of replaced the joke. I mean, people don't really tell jokes anymore the way they used to. I mean, if you think about it, when we were much younger adults, everybody, most men, I think anyway, had kind of a couple of jokes in the back of your mind that you would tell at parties or drinking beers or something like that. And it still happens a little bit, but I know it doesn't happen as much as it used to. I mean, I remember times when we'd be sitting around in the bar and it would be nothing but people trading jokes. And that just doesn't seem to happen as much anymore. But what we do have is the meme. And this guy's argument was the meme has kind of like replaced the joke as the way in which people convey humor socially, because you'll describe memes, you pass them along, you show them to each other. And that's kind of, that's what we have now instead of jokes. And I had never thought of that, but I think he's right. And
do you think some of that
great speed?
Do you think some of that is because so many of the jokes that we told to one another
were horrible?
In the light of modern, sensibilities, we look back on that and feel embarrassed about them because they can be misogynistic or racist or any other ismist. It's just, wow, why did we think that was funny and why did we think that was okay? And it's there's a kind of a cultural and social evolution that's taken place where we've all had the opportunity to reconsider our assumptions. And I think probably certainly for white males, this, sense of superiority that allowed that sort of thing that you never gave a second thought to because that's just, sort of the cultural milieu you were in. And now we look back on it and just like, boy, that was appalling. So
well, that's true. I mean, most jokes were the ethnic
at
jokes
someone's expense,
like right? At someone's expense. True. There was the occasional one that was not, but for the most part, I think they were. And actually, when do you start telling jokes? You start telling them in grade school, like, kids sleepovers and stuff, and at least that's the way it used to be. And yeah, they were all the jokes were at people's expense. I remember growing up near Cleveland, the late night Friday night monster movie hosts were Big Chuck and Houlihan, later Big Chuck and Little John, and Chuck was a producer at Channel 8, and his last name was Sadowski, and so since he was of Polish origin, and there's a lot of Eastern European ethnicities in Cleveland area. They would always tell jokes about a gentleman from a certain ethnic background. And of course, they were Polish jokes, right? And they would clean them up only slightly and do them as skits on TV. And they would tell them on TV, it's like, well, a gentleman of a certain ethnic background was too stupid to tie his own shoe. I mean, it's like, and you were getting that kind of reinforcement as a grade school kid watching these guys. It's like, yeah, you're right. It's good. It's good that some things have changed. Absolutely. Anyway, the memes, the stunning speed at which memes flourish not even overnight, like within seconds of a news event.
Yeah.
And is amazing to me. Yeah. But no.
Yeah. And you never know what's going to go viral. That the Josh Hawley thing happened so rapidly, and it was like, oh, that is really funny. And the whole hearing room just burst out in laughter.
I know,
because and one of the cornerstones of humor is irony, right? So here's this guy, this tough guy, egging everybody on, and then running like a scared rabbit when when the chickens come home to roost. What a weenie. But speaking of robots, not to change the subject, but did you see the story?
Oh, I think that was a clean transition, Jeff. That was not a subject.
But did you see the story about that poor little 7-year-old boy in Moscow?
I did not until I saw it in the newsletter. Please tell us.
Yeah, well, there's this, they were having this big chess tournament in Moscow, as they're wont to do. And so they have at one of the tables where there's multiple chess boards laying around. In the center is this big robotic arm. So you've got this big robot arm who's circulating around the various players and moving the pieces. Now, one little kid, 7 years old. First of all, we've got a 7-year-old, in a chess tournament. I mean, that's pretty impressive in and of itself. I mean, right? So this kid reaches over to move a piece, and apparently it wasn't exactly his turn yet. He was just getting really eager, like a 7-year-old will do.
7-year-old will.
And the robot with his gigantic robot pincers comes down and crushes the kid's finger. And it's got the finger, and the kid's going, ah! And, everybody panics and everybody runs over, and they finally wrench the kid's finger free from the robot, and ends up, his hand ends up in a cast. But here, there's a couple of really cool, things to think about after. First of all, this kid is so tough that he shows up, right after that, hand in a cast, continues to play.
Excellent.
So,
good for the kid.
So, so that's right. So, they make them tough in Moscow, apparently, tough enough to take on robots.
It's the winters and the bread lines. Yeah.
Yeah, the winners and the breadlines. Yeah, but one of the things that occurred to me is that it reminded me of Isaac Asimov. I don't know if you ever read I, Robot.
I did.
It's a series. I think it's, if I recall correctly, a series of short stories all about robots. But in it, Isaac Asimov postulated a series, actually 3 rules for robots. Right. Mm-hmm. And robots have rules. And if you're going to make a robot, they have to all be programmed. And one of them is, the first rule of robotics is a robot may not injure a human being or through inaction allow a human being to come to harm. Right. And so this robot obviously has violated the first law of robotics. But what's unknown is, what are the penalties for that? I mean, what do you do with a robot who breaks the law? I mean, how do you even put them on trial? How do you have a jury of its peers, right?
Well, that's a good question. And I don't remember a story dealing with that. Maybe one did, and I just have forgotten it. But for some reason, it reminds me of the one of the books we read earlier this year with one of our book group, Clara and the Sun, by oh gosh, Why did his name just fall out of my brain? He's a brilliant author who I love. And and at the end of the book, you sort of find out what happens to the robots. They just are deserted, like on a pile. I mean, like there's a landfill for robots, and when they use up their time, they just kind of put them there. And
that seems sad.
It is very sad. It's a great book. Why can't I remember? Good grief! I'm gonna before the end
Well,
of the
you know
podcast.
what? That this just adds further fuel to the thought that I had that robots probably need an advocacy group. And I propose an advocacy group for robots. I'm going to call it PETA.
Which
People for the ethical treatment of androids. How does that
androids
sound?
I like that. I like that. Kazuo Ishiguro is the author I was trying to think of. Yeah, who also wrote Never Let Me Go, which is or Never Let You Go, which is the one where the children are raised as replacement body parts.
Right.
For human beings, for clones or raised.
Okay, if we're gonna play author trivia,
yeah,
we had another book we read, did we not, about a guy who buys an android and his girlfriend has an affair with him.
Oh, machines like me. Machines, by Ian McEwan. Yeah.
Ian McEwan,
who wrote Atonement and is one of my favorite guys. And yeah, that was a good, a completely different take on the whole modern robot story. But yeah, that's a very good one. Yeah, the guy buys also set in Britain. The guy buys a new generation of robot friends because he's basically bored and lonely. And this guy, the robot ends up having more personality than he does. And
right.
At one point, his girlfriend decides to have sex with the robot, and the guy can't figure out if that's a line crossed or not. She's like, "Well, I mean, what if I just used a vibrator?" And he's a machine. Like, and would you be mad about that? And he was like, "Well, no, I don't think so." She's like, "Well, he's a vibrator with a body attached." He's like, "No, that's not right." I mean, there's more to the story than that one incident, but it is a very, very good book. Yeah. I like all of Ian McEwan's stuff. He's not all of it.
I do too.
Yeah, he's the guy.
He's got a very weird sense of humor. And speaking of weird, I got one more thing I want to talk about from the upcoming newsletter, because this was actually kind of terrifying, but it's about zombie fungus.
Oh, I saw that.
Yeah, and I'd seen stories in journals earlier that there's certain kinds of fungi that infect ants, and they can literally take over an entire ant colony and have the ant colony do the fungi's business for it, which is probably just propagating fungi all around. Well, now there's another fungus, and I probably can't pronounce it correctly, so I won't. But it's in the newsletter, everyone. So, and if you haven't signed up for the newsletter, here's a shameless pitch. Go to www.jcbruce.com, and an annoying pop-up will unavoidably show up, and you can sign up for the newsletter. But this fungus with a unpronounceable Latin name goes around killing houseflies, but it only kills female houseflies. It kills the female housefly, and then in its death, the female housefly gives off an aroma that is irresistible to male houseflies, and male houseflies swarm in and have sex with the dead female housefly. So we're talking about necrophiliac fly sex. Okay, how weird is that? And then the male flies go off because now they're infected with the virus, and they do whatever male houseflies do, spreading this fungus all over the place, and that's how the fungus spreads around.
Well, what they do is they land on the sandwich you're about to eat.
Yeah, that's right. And so that does raise the question, right?
Right.
So if they've taken over the ants, one level of organism, now they seem to be taking over the flies. What's next? Birds and then us.
Yeah,
so
monkeypox.
This whole zombie thing could be a real thing, which raises an important question in my mind, which I've had debates with people about, and the question is, can zombies climb stairs? Because if zombies can't fly stairs, I'm feeling pretty safe up here in my second story loft where, at the Strange Files and Tropic Press headquarters. But if zombies can fly stairs, I'm going to have to do something to harden up my defenses up here. So do you have an opinion on that?
I do. Most depictions of popular culture depictions of zombies follow the zombies cannot climb stairs rule. I believe
Right.
in The Walking Dead they can't. I think in 21 Hours they can't. However, what they can do is they can climb over other zombies. So if you have a 500 zombies trying to get into your house, eventually they will climb up over each other and make it up to you, I believe. Is it the what's the movie where they actually take over the world with Brad Pitt?
Yeah, something Z.
Yeah, World War Z. And
World War Z.
World War Z, you recall they climb over each other and scale walls that way. Remember, they kind of like make like a zombie pile.
Yeah, right.
That's how they scale walls, which is a great movie, by the way. Also, an excellent book by Max Collins, I think. Have you read that book?
I have not read the book, nor have I seen the movie, even though I'm aware of it. So.
They're really good. Well, first of all, it's like it's in The Walking Dead. It's like they've already won, right? And the world has ended, and I'm long since done with The Walking Dead. It finally disgusted me too much, and I moved on. But for a while, I was a fan, and as was my wife. But World War Z is a different take. World War Z imagines the actual war, the conflict between us and the zombies on a global scale, in which you have different national responses to the zombie apocalypse. So like, for example, in China, the zombies, like, it's so overcrowded and so overpopulated, the zombies just like eat everybody in a day. China's done. Whereas Israel survives just fine because it's tiny and it already has hard borders and a well-trained military, which includes every citizen in the country, right? And they fight the zombies off, and it's easy peasy, no problem. Israel's just fine. So it's kind of there's a geopolitical, military, cultural conversation that happens in that book that's really interesting. I recommend it. It's a good book.
Spoiler alert, but what happens to Brad?
I don't want to spoil it for you. It's the movie. The movie is, as usual, the movie's not as good as the book, but it's still quite good. And Brad, it's a Rip Snorton adventure movie. Brad is a scientist who ends up being pulled into a couple of different missions to try and save humanity, and it's not it's not as outlandish as you would think for a zombie movie. But it's mostly just
okay. That's I gotta write that down.
You can use that.
Yeah, I'm stealing that line.
I'll tell you. Did you ever watch The Walking Dead when it was on? It's still on.
No, the whole idea. First of all, zombies scare me.
Oh, me too.
And so I don't like being scared. And no, I never saw that. And I'm pretty certain I never will. On the other hand, I think I will see World War Z now that you've told me about that, because I got to find out what happens to Brad.
It is good. Well, speaking of Johnny Depp, we talk about all the time. I think Brad Pitt's a great actor. And
Brad Pitt is a great actor,
and he's undone by his own good looks into being, as far as people taking him seriously as an actor. It's like, well, he's too pretty to be a good actor, right? Well, no, he's a great actor. The best role I think Brad Pitt has ever done is where he plays Jesse James. Speaking of pirates, have you seen the assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford?
Yes.
It's a great movie. It's one of my favorite movies, actually. And in addition to being remarkably historically accurate, for a change, unlike zombie movies, it's a great movie, and he plays this wonderful Jesse James. Casey Affleck plays Robert Ford. It's such a good movie, and now I'm going to rewatch it. I've seen it a couple times. It's really good.
But, I think he is one of the great actors of our generation. And one of the things I like about him so much is that he's not afraid to let his hair down and be funny and be trivial and have bit parts in other people's movies just for grins.
Yep,
You know,
yep.
he's yeah, I like him a lot. I like him a lot, both for his talent and also for, you know, it's just sort of just for him.
I agree. You know what? Actually, a topic for next podcast might be what happened to movie stars.
That is a good topic.
I think we can do that next time because we're about running out here, but
I think we are.
With Tom Cruise, I haven't seen the new Top Gun movie yet. I'm sure you have. But there's been a lot written about what happened to movie stars. And because is he quote unquote the last movie star? And people like, you know, Brad Pitt and Johnny Depp and Tom Hanks names show up in those pieces. But I would look forward to having. I think that'd be a fun conversation.
You know, and something to something to prime the pump on that. I just read that I have not, by the way, seen Maverick yet. I'm waiting for it to stream. But he is either on track to or has in fact already earned $100 million on that movie.
Yeah.
So I don't know what it takes to be a quote unquote Hollywood movie star, but I would think making $100 million on one movie would certainly check a box there.
That would check a box. All right, we'll do that for the next one. Cool.
All right. Well, listen, this has been a fun conversation.
It's going to require us to do actual research, Jeff.
Well, we'll take 5 minutes before we air and, you know, do our usual thorough research on whatever it is we end up talking about, which we never really know.
Right.
So, okay.
Before we sign off, though, we want to wish happy birthday to our favorite president, Barack Obama.
We can. Yeah.
What day? August 4th?
It's coming right up. Let me see here. I'm scrolling on my other screen. I have multiple screens here.
Yeah, me too.
Oh no, it is on August 4th. So it's coming right up.
As you speaking of Josh Hawley, as you observe in your newsletter, President Obama was the last American president to have peacefully and graciously provided over the transfer of power after an election.
There's something to think about, isn't it?
Let's hope that happens again someday.
Let's do hope that happens again someday.
Yes.
All right, man.
All right. Talk to you later. And and don't forget to enjoy the Perseid meteor shower. Hope you have clear skies between August 11 and 13. And
we'll do. I'm sure we'll talk before then.
All right. Be good. Take care.
Take care, Ron. Bye.
Bye.